building these businesses. Usually it's about 12 to 15 employees, about $1.5 million in revenue, where you wake up and you've created a prison for yourself. I think people assume, well, once I'm more successful, I'll just become that person. And that's just not how it works, right? You become the person first, the success follows. So if you don't have a plan to develop yourself, that's when you start sabotaging with that newfound time, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go look in the mirror and go, who do I need to become to deal with a higher level of problems? Because that's the only way we're going to grow the business.
Hey, Dan, welcome to the show.
Steve, it's a pleasure, man. I'm super excited to be here. It's a real honor. You know, I'm a big fan.
Now, we've known each other for many, many, many years. And for a lot of the years, you confuse the shit out of me because you're one of these very, very smart SaaS guys. I remember actually going home and Googling what the hell SaaS was. And you've been a very successful entrepreneur. You've got an incredible fund. You've exited two very, very well-known companies. One of them was Clarity that even I knew about. What makes you tick? What excites you when you get up in the morning?
Dude, it's funny. I'm a software guy. So my optimization routine is literally, how do I squeeze as much out of my day and my week and my month as possible? Like, I just wake up and I go, all right, like I've got, it's funny because you think about it, like most people only live 80 some years. It's not a lot of time. And a third of that you're sleeping. So like shots on goal and opportunity to be effective is very little, but I was just blessed at 17 that I got myself in a lot of trouble and almost took my life. And that moment just gave me that perspective that tomorrow's not guaranteed. Even the next year is not guaranteed. So it's funny. I live in this like 5-year cycle that resets every year. So I've got 5 years because it's enough time to do something meaningful, but not too little time to do something irresponsible. And that's what drives me. I'm just like, I mean, you know this, like I'm a social person. I'm an active person. I love the game of business. Like I'm known as a software guy, but man, I nerd out at the business strategy sequencing level with my clients that are all over the entrepreneurial space, from, DTC brands. I sit on the board of an incredible company called Pila. I mean, I just love the entrepreneurial game.
And you live life, you live life in the boardroom, you live life out, Ironman training, fitness. You focus on, and you've already said it, optimization in your body and your health, but also you've taken that into your home. And your home is very, shall we just say, organized is probably an understatement. Tell us a little bit about your home, your life.
Yeah, it's very intentional. I think the best way I heard it framed was Dan Sullivan calls it the 4 seasons living, right?
Yes.
So he says, like, I want to live in my primary residence as if I was in the 4 seasons, meaning that if I don't want to cook, I don't have to cook. If I don't want to make my bed, I don't want to clean up after myself. I want to have access to all the amenities. And that's kind of the approach I've taken. When my wife and I, both entrepreneurs, started having kids, we took the concept of a nanny, which is not crazy, an au pair, people have them. But then I just kind of like brought it up a level, right? And I thought, okay, if I have, today I buy companies and I have CEOs that run those companies, but even in my personal life, if I have an executive assistant that's responsible for my calendar, my time, she essentially is responsible for the corporate Dan, the executive Dan, the anything external. What if I had somebody that owned my personal stuff? And that's what we have. We call her Betty is her name, but we call her house manager. And she's responsible for all the real estate, all our personal assets, our vehicles, our passports. You actually gave me a passport cover I still use today. So thank you, Steve, for that gift a long time ago. Still the DM initials on it. Super kind of you. But like renewal dates, credit cards, processing mail. So essentially the way I've structured my life is my house manager reports to my executive assistant. I have one person I chat with, and they take care of all the paperwork, the systems, the processes, so that my wife and I can do only one of two things: create things that only we can create in our businesses and interact with, and then hang out with people we love, right? Take care of each other, take care of our family, take care of our community. We're incredibly active. And that's how, for me, because the whole concept of like, I know the value of my time quantified, like dollar amounts, anything that I could just pay somebody else to do, I'm willing to make that trade. And I think some people are so focused on saving money and wealth. Although I've done really well in my life, I'm a big fan of reinvesting and trading, becoming a better time trader. And that's why in my personal life, like if you came and hung out and watched me, like at 4 o'clock, I get a protein shake brought to my office, put in my hand. I mean, it sounds silly, but it is. I have all the stuff that I need, from like meal prep to my gym equipment. I do a lot of Ironman training. So like all my bike maintenance, it's on a schedule. No different than if I ran a big company. I'd have people taking care of marketing and sales and customer success. I have in my personal, I'm literally looking at a pile of all my gym. It's like tightly folded in front of me. And I'm like, oh, cool. That's where it's supposed to be. Because after this, I'm going to work out. Like, and that's just a rhythm that we've decided as a family that we want to adopt, so that we can create employment, right? So we have a small team of people that manage our personal stuff, and then just have the freedom in our calendar to, to enjoy life. Because I think some people think these are experiences that are reserved for the billionaires, the Richard Bransons of the world. I talk about in my book, but they're not. It's literally available to entrepreneurs today. I actually think the home stuff is the biggest opportunity after the executive assistant, if the partner has to be on board. Like I coach a lot of men and women, and that one's a little tougher to get people. They're more likely to give up their inbox than they are having somebody in their personal space that, but yeah, it is what it is. Once you break through that belief, man, it is a very fun life to live, because you just stop having to be pulled into things that you don't have to be involved in.
Hey, I'm sorry for interrupting this podcast. I know it's a brilliant one, but I wanted to talk to you about your room, your connections. Now, we know full well that great things come from great connections and great rooms. Now, if you're in a room full of people that will challenge you, inspire you, motivate you, and support you, then great. But if not, then maybe I have the solution for you. Head on over to stevedsims.com, look up Sims Distillery there, and join our community of creative disruptors. Those that are only not there to help you and motivate and actually give you information, but to support and answer questions. We very much vet the room to make sure that we support each other's growth. We all want each other to grow. So if you want to be in the right room, head on over to stevedsims.com/Sims Distillery, and I'll see you inside my room. Enjoy the rest of the show. Now, it's very easy to sit here and go, oh, that's how rich people live.
Super privilege.
Yeah, they have people scratch their ears and kind of like, floss between the toes. Oh, that's how those people live. I remember a while back, I got a chef. And I got a chef that would come in, and he'd come in like 2-3 times a week and plan for the next few days and would cook. And everyone was like, my God, you got to look at hoity-toity. But it was because I hated deciding what the freaking hell we were going to cook. We were incredibly busy at the moment. Claire was doing all the accounting, so we didn't have the time to eat properly. And each night we were eating McDonald's or anything that could be bloody delivered. So our health was going down. So we did this on the suggestion of a friend, and all of a sudden got hours, got healthier, got revitalized, and saw the benefit. Now, sadly, my chef went, but with so many companies out there, I think I use a company now called Shallow Plug from Cook Unity, which deliver these meals to me. As an entrepreneur, we hold on to everything, don't we? We think when we're an entrepreneur, we can handle everything, where we can handle something well, but pretty much everything else shitty. So we're really bad at actually delegating. You think that this delegating you're doing now is because you're privileged, but it's because you understand the value of time. So why shouldn't people be doing that? And I know it sounds funny. Hey, you should be doing this when you haven't got a lot of money. But isn't it funny that when you start doing it, how much more money you can make from the time you now have? It's kind of a weird thing, isn't it?
It's very fascinating. So when I wrote my book, I sat down and I wrote 25 people's names down. Okay. These are family members and my best friends and entrepreneurs that I love. And I wrote their names down because I believe in being a lighthouse, not a tugboat, right? If I see somebody doing something where I wouldn't make that decision, I don't criticize them or correct them unless they ask. I just use that for social media content. And in this case, to write my book. And I sat down and I thought, what are all the reasons people have given me for not doing this? I can't afford it. I don't have the time to train people, et cetera, et cetera. And I had to systematically break down, belief bust, all these mindset limiters for what's possible. But you nailed it. Like, here's the reality. If I have a skill set where I know that my hour dedicated 60 minutes, like really focused hour, is worth X amount of money, then anytime I'm doing something that I can pay somebody else to do for a quarter of that amount, that's the buyback rate that I go over in my book.
Yep. Then
anytime you don't do that, you're literally swimming against the stream. You're making your life harder. Okay. And so if your goal is to make your life harder, keep doing it. Like, rock on. Keep making your own meals and going grocery shopping and do all that stuff. But instead of doing that, if you did things that lit you up, that made you a lot of money, to be able to create more opportunity, resources, to contribute to your life, to buy back your time. Like, what I've seen entrepreneurs do more often than not is they build a business that they grow to hate. So the biggest risk to a business is not that the market, their customers, their partners, their bank shuts them down. It's they create something that they hate, and then they decide to stop doing it, which risks everybody's employment, versus giving themselves permission to put themselves first. So the buyback principle states we don't hire people to grow our business. We hire people to buy back our time. Because if I buy back my time, I will get growth in my business, as you mentioned, right? Because I'll have that newfound time, and then I can reinvest it in skills, beliefs, and character traits to develop myself, my understanding and my abilities to then create more opportunity. I mean, that's what makes us entrepreneurs, is we're creators. Like that, the subtitle of my book is Build Your Empire. And that's a scary word for people because they're like, well, I don't want an empire. That seems big and massive. Empire in my world is very simple: a life of unlimited creation that you never have to retire from. And I think everybody should have that, right? Build your empire where, to the degree you want to create, there's no limit to that, because you've built the infrastructure so that when you want to sit down and work, you can. And when you're not, and you got to go take care of your body and your health and your relationships, you'll have the space to do that.
Now, I've worked with a lot of billionaires. I've been very fortunate to deal with some of the richest, most powerful people in the planet. And very rarely have I ever had a conversation about money with these people. But I was shocked how many of them talked to me about the impact of their time, what they could do, because they know they can make more money. They know they can make more mistakes, but they can't go on Amazon and order a bucket at a time. When did you suddenly realize that your time was more valuable than anything else?
Dude, I ran into this, unfortunately, when I was 27. You know, a lot of people see me today and they see the accolades and the business success, but fortunately, I just started at a young age. And so I got a lot of big failures out of the way, 17, 19, 21. And finally at 24, I hired a business coach, this guy named Bob. He was an E-Myth certified coach. So I was resonating with the systems process thinking for a while. And I got really efficient. So for 3 years, I built a multi-million-dollar agency company called Spheric Technologies and had about 30 some employees and became really successful. Made my first $1 million in cash and then eventually exited the company. What happened though is I was engaged to a woman and I was working late one night. When I came home, I found her in tears, and she dropped the ring, took the ring off, dropped it on the counter and left. And that really, that moment shaped me in a big way, because I thought success was about business success and financial success. And yes, I was in a relationship, but like that was going to set us up for the future. And I misunderstood what it meant to be in a relationship, a good brother, a son to my father, you know, part of my community at all. I was just obsessed, right? And because I was so scared I was going to fail again, right? And it was through that period of going, okay, I'm driven. So I am definitely somebody that is type A. I want to create, I want to produce. But at the same time, like, I did have dreams of being in a relationship. I wanted to have kids. I wanted to have a family. I mean, if anything, it's why I was working so hard. And what's crazy at that point is, you know, a lot of people listen to this, maybe they're working really hard and they're driving towards their goals, and maybe they're sacrificing their family life. But I want to remind people that your family never asked you for any of this. My 2 boys that are in my house have never asked me for any of this. Nothing. They could care 2 cents less that whether I do anything in business, but what they want is my presence, and what they want is my attention and interest and conversations. So that's when I realized, oh, I need the time. Like you said, I can buy back other stuff. I cannot make more time. When I have a moment to say something meaningful to my kid after a soccer game, if I'm distracted because I'm still in work mode, then that's a missed opportunity. So after that experience, I moved to Silicon Valley and I got introduced to a completely different way of building companies, right? Like Silicon Valley is these, 20-some-year-old kids building $100 million a year companies in 7 years. Like it's really fascinating. And what you learn is this concept of leverage. So Steve, people talk about leverage all the time, right? Like you need leverage, you leverage your money, you got to leverage your time and all this stuff, but nobody talks about like how it works. So leverage is, constant of time multiplied times some lever equals output. And it's, Steve Jobs, Richard Branson, they all have a completely different ability to create an outcome. But the only multiplier is leverage. And there's only 4 master skills, I call them, of leverage, right? The first, and there are 4 C's. First one's capital, right? It takes money to make money, or we take money, we can create more. Second one is content, playbooks. This video could be seen 10 million times, huge leverage, training videos, et cetera, all examples of leverage, media. Third is collaboration, which is my book, people, labor. So how do you interact and work with people? So that's a skill set. That's a master skill. And the fourth is code, right? Automation, software, AI today. Those are the only 4 ways to get leverage. So when I moved to Silicon Valley and I saw how these people were building companies, and I had this desire to not be like just a rich uncle to all my brothers, nieces, and nephews, I wanted to be a family man. I wanted to have a rich life. I realized I had to figure out the time part, right? And that's the only way. If you constrain that you can only work, let's say, whatever amount of hours. I work my ass off. Steve, I don't want anybody listening to think that I don't work. I get up at 4 a.m. and I hit it hard and I go, okay? But when I'm not. I don't have notifications on my phone. I have dinner with my family every night. Like I have structure. So with the constraint of that, then how do I create $100 million companies? Because that's what I want to do, right? So I had to master those 4 skills. This book is about labor. This is the collaboration style of how do you leverage your team and people into your life, because that's the first place people should start looking, right? To get leverage to increase their output, because the more output you get, the bigger the number is that you can then have more resources to buy more time back. So that's, for me, that's where it started, is the pain of going through my first failed engagement, that relationship, the desire of wanting to have a family, but knowing that I'm also an incredibly obsessed creator and entrepreneur. And luckily meeting some mentors like Naval Ravikant, who's a very well-known person today in Silicon Valley, but like having those people share with me their perspectives on scaling software companies, that I was like, hey, I can apply that to my life. I can apply it to my business. And the better I get at it, the more output I get.
So you're very much of an engineer in the way you look at things. And you look to way to say, where will fit that? What will work there? What's a waste of time? How can I maximize the moments I've got? Why did that lead you after so long? And you are very successful people, and I can't underestimate it or understate it. There are links below about what he's got up to. This guy is a very sharp nut that we're listening to. Why the book and why now?
Yeah. I mean, it took me 2.5 years to write the book. And the reason I wrote it is because my whole career, I've only ever spoken and worked with software entrepreneurs. Yet 90% of my business interests and my friend groups are non-software people. And when they've seen me operate, my lives, being the CEO of 2 8-figure companies, training for Ironman, being, what people call a family man or a father first or whatever it is, they're curious. And I try to explain to them, well, here's my relationship with my executive assistant. Here's my relationship with my house manager. And they're like, they kept, but there's pieces missing, because that's not enough. There's the belief system. There's the quantifying your buyback rate. There's understanding how to become a better time trader. So in a funny way, I wrote the book to buy back my time, because I wanted to help other people learn the things I wanted to share, but I didn't want to have to take 4, 5, 6 hours with them. But more importantly, is just create awareness of a different way to build a company in the world of entrepreneurship. Like, I just want people to avoid the pain. I call it the pain line of building these businesses. Usually it's about 12 to 15 employees, about $1.5 million in revenue, where you wake up and you've created a prison for yourself. And that's just unfortunate because they've never been taught otherwise. And then that's the story they tell themselves is, ouch, that was painful. I'm going to downsize. I'm going to sell this. So I call it the 3 S's, either sell, sabotage, or stall. And the truth is if they change the process of how they look at their calendar, their energy, and then deploy capital to buy back their time, you can actually grow. This isn't like this is not a sales pitch. Like, you can grow your business and buy back your time. So the bigger the business grows, the more time you have back. And it's, if anything, and I talk about this in the book, the chaos aspect, most entrepreneurs that start to feel this, and that's why I love coaching, I watch them start throwing hand grenades in their business. So things start to go good. They're like, okay, I got an executive assistant. Holy cow, I got 30 hours of my week back. I'm not in my inbox. And then they're like, then they run into their team and they just like deploy a hand grenade in their sales process. Or they're like, oh, we need to add a new product line. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How about we get okay with things just working? So a lot of entrepreneurs come from chaos in their family life. And it's why they're entrepreneurs, because they learned at a young age to deal with a higher level of uncertainty. So to me, the buyback principle is kind of like this chocolate broccoli, where the chocolate is you're going to get your time back. The broccoli is you learning to have a different relationship with your emotions around people and how you support your team. Because if you've mentioned the powerful billionaire people, it's actually fascinating to watch how little emotion they go through their life with, right? Like they're not freaking out and screaming at people for the most part. Some people think that's how it is. That's not been my experience. They're usually very calm-headed because they understand that the grand scheme of it, somebody else doing something for them that they didn't have to do is really awesome. I always say 80% done by somebody else is 100% freaking awesome. So if you have somebody else running departments for you or companies for you, like, you should really be appreciative of the scenario, because they're the ones that are making you the wealth to be able to live this life. So how do you work through that emotion? And it's funny because it's in your body for a lot of people, right? It's the anxiety, it's the fear. What if somebody does something to a customer and then they think I'm an idiot? It's like, let's talk about that. So that's the broccoli side of the equation that I think the buying back the time unlocks, and for me is my favorite part of a conversation with an entrepreneur, not the mechanics of how to do it. Just the book will give you the mechanics. I want to have the conversations about the feelings that come up when you start deploying this. So, name of the book is Buy Back Your Time. Where can they get it? Is there a website with any kind of perks, or is it just straight over to Amazon? No, buybackyourtime.com is the best place to get it. If you go there, you can click through to the different retailers, but come back because I do have a completed kind of workbook. Like, and some people said I could have launched it as a separate thing. And I'm like, no, I'm giving it away. It's got the whole detailed structure, the different processes, specifically if you work with a team. Because a lot of executives that read the book, they've told me, they're like, I needed this, thank you, but now I need my whole executive team to understand it. So that workbook will help you communicate and integrate that into your team effort. So, because I mean, if you get your top people all buying back their time so that they go and do only the thing that they're rocking, that's a multiplication effect in a business. I noticed one thing happened to me when I started outsourcing all of my shit. You actually brought up Dan Sullivan. I remember when he turned around and he said, if you focus on your weaknesses, you end up with some really strong weaknesses. So I remember that. And I remember going through my life going, okay, what am I borderline crap, not vague, and get rid of that. And as you say, you suddenly get this time. Now you want to be able to turn around and go, wow, I've got these 30 hours now, but you end up almost going into this cold turkey. And as you say, actually sabotaging your growth because you now have that time. If someone grabs your book and decides, okay, I'm going to focus on my time, how do they focus on that? Because I don't think a lot of people are prepared of when they do get the time to be able to do things, rather than this time that they have to do things that they don't want to do. How do they handle that transition? Beautiful question. Yeah. So the framework of the buyback principle is the buyback loop, which is audit, transfer, fill, right? At any point that we feel like we've hit this kind of complexity ceiling, this kind of like upper limit, We want to audit our time for time and energy, and I have a whole process for that. Transfer, give that to other people on your team or hire somebody to take that over. And then fill with that newfound time things that focus on 3 core areas. 1, skills. No matter where you're at, there's another level of skills that you're going to need to acquire to get there. Okay, so if you don't have that plan of like, I need this skill, this skill, this skill as I grow, I teach that. Second is belief. See, Steve, to me, it's not even, do I have the skill or do I know how to do the activity? It's, do you have the worldview or the belief system that's going to allow you to pursue that and continue to do it? So attacking the beliefs. And then the third is character traits, which is, if you think of it like a ladder of success, on the left side, there's the new skills, the right side's the new beliefs. And then the character traits is almost like the steps of the ladder to lock in the persistence, the mental toughness, the assertiveness. These are all character traits of highly successful people, right? People that are direct, right? They're not rude. They're just clear with their understanding. So like learning these communication skills, learning these emotional regulation. Like I teach HRV balance. Like how do you regulate your heart so that you can pull vocabulary when's required? So like there's all these different skill set that I think people assume, well, once I'm more successful, I'll just become that person. And that's just not how it works, right? You become the person first, the success follows. So if you don't have a plan to develop yourself, that's when you start sabotaging with that newfound time, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to go look in the mirror and go, who do I need to become to deal with a higher level of problems? Because that's the only way we're going to grow the business. I've
noticed from the people I've dealt with that it's been a opposite to the way, how shall I say this discreetly, and I don't know how I can, opposite to the way poor people perceive things. When people want to focus on getting money, they look at the bank account. The bank account is a byproduct of you focusing on your impact and what you can do. Getting slim is a byproduct of exercise. Getting smarter is a byproduct of you reading and training yourself. So too many people focus on the wrong thing. Some people focus on, I have all of this time, rather than the smart people focusing on, I have the ability, I have opportunity now. Now, you've got more time and you fill it up. Your family, your businesses, as I say, you're a very successful fund buying and expanding these companies, doing the Ironman. What are you trying to do more of at this moment in time of your life?
It's a great question, Steve. I mean, to just let people understand, like I have 6 coaches that I work with. Okay. One of my coaches, I pay $350K a year for a 45-minute conversation once a month, but he flies around the world in a global express. He's, almost a billionaire. He's incredibly sought after. And I'm doing the same thing that I teach clients if they're starting to try to get their first 100K that I'm doing at my level, because it's essentially learning the next level of skills, right? Like if I want to bring a company public, then I need to learn the skills to bring a company public. It doesn't mean I need to know the Sarbanes-Oxley and all the compliance, but I need to build a peer group of people that are brought. You essentially want to like develop yourself so that the thing you're trying to accomplish becomes inevitable. Like that's the big idea of success. Like you said, like weight loss. Like weight loss is not hard. It's a caloric deficit, right? It's a math equation. Being successful is a math equation. It's create more value per unit of time than somebody else. So the only way to do that is with leverage. If you don't have leverage through investing in yourself and becoming more valuable, then you're never going to be able to create more value per unit of time. So to me, yes, it's reading. Jim Rohn is the OG. Like his YouTube lectures are just awesome. Like invest more in your development than in your job. Like he used to say all these like one-liners around personal development, but that is essentially what the game is about. The game, and people want to make it more complicated than that. But the truth is if your TV is bigger than your library in your house, that's an issue, right?
You've got your time well mapped out, well scheduled. You're incredibly analytically focused on your time. Isn't it a little bit scary releasing a book? Because this is your first book and people are going to realize more about you. The first thing that I realized was when you release a book, once it's left your hands, you have no control of it. So there are people all over the planet reading your book, now wanting moments of your time. Are you possibly concerned that releasing this book is going to eat up more of your time that you hadn't actually planned for? Or are you looking for that challenge?
Yeah, I would love that challenge more and more. I think what's happened over the years, I'm fortunate that like my ability, because I produce a lot of social media, I have 1 million followers across all channels. I've built a team in the infrastructure to deal with the request, right? Like, so the truth is, and I've also created what I call an interface. I'm a software person. So like an API is what we call it in the software world. I have an API for how to interact with me. So for example, every Tuesday morning, this morning, I went for a hike. It's an open invite. Steve, I've had people fly in from Florida, all across the world to come hike for 45 minutes. If they want to do that, that's 100% cool on me. So, but guess what? We're going to work out. So it creates a filter. I do a lot of downhill mountain biking. And at the beginning of the trail, they call it a filter feature. There's a jump, a drop, a gap that sets the tone for the rest of the route. And if you can't get past the filter feature, you shouldn't drop down that trail. For me, I've created the same scenario where I create these kind of like rules of engagement that I tell my executive assistant for podcast requests or investment opportunities. We have investment criteria. So it's what I always say is the next level requires you to deal with a higher level of complexity. It's not impossible. It's just a new skill set. So one of my coaches, has, I don't know, like 50 million followers on his social media. And he explains to me today that like, Dan, you might have to go to 2 or 3 phones a year because you'll be getting attacked by people trying to impersonate you and steal your wealth and all. And it's like, but that's, and I asked him, is it worth it? He goes, of course it's worth it, because the upside of the ability to impact and serve people is worth the downside of the challenges you're going to have to deal with. So yeah, I'm ready for it. And I've already thought through it so that I did it with eyes wide open. As you can tell, I'm a little analytical and thoughtful and stuff, but
I can imagine you calculate the shit out of this.
I do.
That's one thing else I want to touch on. I find that the more that people focus on results and impact, the more irritated they become with people. Because people that do actually share our vision, and it's like when we go to a mastermind event, like we got to give a shout out to Jason Gaynard, because that was where we first met at the Mastermind Talks event. When you're in that kind of room, everyone's challenging. When you're talking to someone about a $1 million deal, a $1 billion deal, a $500,000 project, it's a conversation. And it makes sense, and you're in the conversation. When you're outside and you're in the real world, people are looking at you like you're crazy, stick to your lane, don't risk everything. It's a different conversation. So I find that the more successful people become, the more irritated they can become with people. Yet you actually love having conversations with people. You are one of those weird people that are very sociable. How have you remained to be that?
I might annoy people with my answer, but here's what I believe. I believe that I'm a person of faith, and I believe that God is in everybody. And I do a lot of work with at-risk youth and a lot of work with the unhoused community in our cities. And I just believe that had I gone through the same experiences as that person, 100%, I would probably be living the same life that they have lived. So I have so much grace for meeting people where they're at. So what I would call sometimes stupid questions or weird interactions, like this morning on the hike, there was a guy that showed up and I could tell he didn't know how to act with himself around me. Like he must have been following me for years and he finally had an opportunity to meet me. And it was a very awkward for him, not for me. Cause like, I'm the guy that'll give him a hug and just tell them to calm down, man. It's good. Like you're normal. I'm normal. We're going to have some fun. You're going to meet some cool people. Let's just have a great conversation. So I think because I see, that in everybody, their giftedness, their true spirit, not the other stuff that concerns anxiety, the fears, the doubt, all that stuff, that I'm just able to just like be with people. And I just think like, the truth is, Steve, I think we're all here to do 2 things. Every person. 1, become the best version of ourselves. And 2, share that person with the world. And that might be your family, your community. But if we do that, it's why what we do, it's why sharing our content feels so good. It's like, those are things that are part of our DNA. Becoming better, growth is built into our DNA. So become the best version of yourself. And then sharing that with the world, it's anytime you're able to help somebody else, man, that means way more than a personal accomplishment. Like, there's a reason why in our biology, it's programmed that serving other people, helping our family, helping our kids just feels so much better than the self-interest of taking care of ourselves. And I just think that's a cool message to hopefully propagate to every person I get to meet, is I want them to be the best version of themselves and to share that person with their family, with their community, with their church, with their CrossFit gym. I don't care. Just go on the journey and then share. It's kind of awesome.
That is pretty cool. Look, I'm drinking the Dan Kool-Aid here, so maybe I should start getting a bit more friendly, but buybackyourtime.com is the best place to go and get the book. If you're driving and you just hear me rambling, then go back to this podcast, look at the links below. We will be putting it in there, buybackyourtime.com. You really shouldn't have a problem remembering that. Dan, thank you so much for two things. One, being on the show, and one, for being you. You know, there's not a lot of people that I meet that I'm just addicted to their energy, but there is a strength in yours, and I just admire the way you live. So congratulations, and thank you for being there.
It's an honor. Appreciate it, Steve.
Cheers, pal. Bye. Well, that was another episode of the Art of Making Things Happen podcast with me, your host, Steve Sims. If you like it, you know the scoop. Subscribe, tell your friends, share it around. Let them get benefit from this juice. And of course, if you want to change the room you're in, join Sims Distillery. Jump over to stevedsims.com/Sims Distillery, or you can find a link directly from that website. That's the room where creative disruptors get together to actually help each other become better. If you've got standards or you want higher standards, join the right room. See you next time.